The very first Ducati Monster appeared on the scene in 1993. At this time, most manufacturers focused on producing motorcycles with fairings capable of sustained and unbelievable fast highway speeds. But Ducati grabbed the headlines with a bike that had no fairing at all. Or for that matter, anything else that wasn't deemed essential on a motorcycle. Just an engine, two wheels, a seat and handlebars. Since then, the Ducati Monster has become one of the most iconic and legendary motorcycles of all time. This first generation of Monsters had a 904cc, air-cooled, single overhead cam L-twin engine with 2 valves per cylinder. Many call these engines V-twins, but the man who originally designed these Ducati twin-cylinder engines correctly named them as L-twins because the angle between the cylinders is 90 degrees, whereas a V-shape is always less than 90 degrees. Anyway, call them whatever you prefer. The bike itself was designed by this bloke, who later went on to design many other notable motorcycles, and he is currently Vice President of Design for Piaggio. Its engine power of 80 horsepower was transferred to its 6-speed gearbox via means of a dry clutch. While some riders don't like Ducati dry clutches, because they can be quite heavy, a bit grabby and somewhat noisy once they get a bit of wear on them, you either love them or you hate them. But to this day, a dry clutch is still the most efficient way of transferring engine power to the gearbox. And because the Ducati Monster also has a chain final drive, which is also extremely efficient, horsepower reduction to the rear wheel is kept to a minimum. Many internet sites state that the bike's horsepower was 67 horsepower at the rear wheel, but this is not true.
No!
Ducati itself states that the M900 Monster produced 73 horsepower at the rear wheel. But a totally independent dyno test at the time, in 1993, reported that the bike actually produced 75.7 horsepower. So even Ducati may have shortchanged themselves a little bit in this area. As a comparison, the original Kawasaki Z1900 produced a similar 82 horsepower at the crank, but at the rear wheel it only produced 64.2 horsepower. Whatever the case may be, the M900 will still clock a best quarter mile time of under 12 seconds in the right hands. It was, and still is, plenty quick enough for the vast majority of riders. The only thing monster about the M900 is the monster smile that it puts on your face. They are an enormous amount of fun to ride. Give it a handful at any revs and the monster will surge forward at quite an alarming rate. They only weighed a mere 185 kilos, and this combined with its short wheelbase made popping a mono pretty easy. And the monster soon became known as the king of wheelies. Its deep, booming exhaust note is a sound that would bring a smile to anyone's dial. And it is this sound, which is a huge part of the joy that comes from owning and riding any Ducati. Later on, the Monster was also available in less expensive 600cc and a 750cc version. And they even made a 400cc version which was sold in some countries around the world. Of course, these cheaper Monsters were much more basic, utilising cheaper suspension and brakes, etc. However, the Monster was not really designed for sheer performance. Most riders buy Ducati Monsters for two very simple reasons. They are just plain fun to ride, and they look absolutely fantastic. The styling is very simple, yet extremely beautiful. From the twin upswept mufflers, and of course that very beautiful Ducati steel trellis frame, all built around that lumpy twin-cylinder engine, there was no mistaking a Monster for any other bike on the road. The bike just looks brutal, hence the name. It is a visual masterpiece of minimalism. Instrumentation too was kept to a minimum, with just a speedometer and some warning lights to its right hand side. There wasn't even a tachometer. While it may be nice to have a tacho, they are not really a necessary item. You are either in the right gear or you're not. It's just that simple. Its brakes and suspension were top notch. It was a very agile bike and handled like a dream. And the engine itself was very flexible. It didn't matter how many revs you were doing, the bike just goes. While it may have been designed more of a street bike and for fun on twisty roads, the M900 was still capable of reaching a top speed of at least 200 km per hour. A closer look at the fuel tank reveals some very nice contours, like the raised edge around the fuel cap. And of course, another unique and very good feature was the quick release fuel tank itself. Just unhook the latch at the front of the tank, you don't need any tools whatsoever, and the tank just lifts up to give very easy access to the battery, the fuses and the air filter, making the bike extremely easy to work on. It's a bit of a shame that manufacturers these days don't make maintenance this easy anymore. It was a very creative, unique and practical design feature, and another thing that set the Monster apart from all other motorcycles. Unfortunately, as good as the Monster was, it did, in my opinion, have one serious design flaw. This thing, the dreaded self-retracting side stand. I've had a few different bikes with these, and I can tell you, these things are an absolute nightmare. If you're not extremely careful using them, it will just be a matter of time before your bike falls over, so be warned. From the year 2000, the Monster 900 gained fuel injection and was known as the 900IE. And in case you don't know, IE is Italian for fuel injection. And there is no way that I'm even going to attempt to pronounce that. While it may have gained a few more horsepower, it also gained a few more kilos, and performance was only marginally better than the carburetted version. The Monster M900 probably saved Ducati from certain bankruptcy at the time, because the Monster sold like nothing else Ducati had ever made before. Since its inception, Ducati has sold over 350,000 Monsters in various forms. And this bike is a single reason that Ducati has the money to build the extravagant motorcycles that they produce today. Sadly, however, that beautiful steel trellis frame has all but disappeared on the current model Monsters. To my eye, nowadays they look a bit more like a KTM than a Ducati Monster. Anyway, more on that in later videos when I cover the other generations of this truly iconic motorcycle. Cheers and thanks for watching.